Chapter 2. They live at the marsh. She was the daughter of a Polish landowner who, deeply in debt to the Jews, had married a German wife with money, and who had died just before the rebellion. Quite young, she had married Paul Lenski, an intellectual who had studied at Berlin, and had returned to Warsaw a patriot. Her mother had married a German merchant and gone away. Lydia Lenski, married to the young doctor, became, with him, a patriot and an emancipee. They were poor, but they were not very conceited. She learned nursing as a mark of her emancipation. They represented in Poland the new movement just began in Russia. But they were very patriotic, and at the same time very European. They had 2 children. Then came the Great Rebellion. Lenski, very ardent and full of words, went about inciting his countrymen. Little Poles flamed down the streets of Warsaw on the way to shoot every Muscovite. So they crossed into the south of Russia, and it was common for 6 little insurgents to ride into a Jewish village, brandishing swords and words, emphasizing the fact that they were going to shoot every living Muscovite. Lenski was something of a fire-eater also. Lydia, tempered by her German blood, coming of a different family, was obliterated, carried along in her husband's emphasis of declaration, and his whirl of patriotism. He was indeed a brave man, but no bravery could quite have equaled the vividness of his talk. He worked very hard, till nothing lived in him but his eyes, and Lydia, as if drugged, followed him like a shadow, serving, echoing. Sometimes she had her 2 children, sometimes they were left behind. She returned once to find them both dead of diphtheria. Her husband wept aloud, unaware of everybody. But the war went on, and soon he was back at his work. A darkness had come over Lydia's mind. She walked always in a shadow, silenced with a strange, deep terror having hold of her. Her desire was to seek satisfaction in dread, to enter a nunnery, to satisfy the instincts of dread in her, through service of a dark religion. But she could not. Then came the flight to London. Lenski, the little thin man, had got all his life locked into a resistance, and could not relax again. He lived in a sort of insane irritability, touching hotly to the last degree, fractious, so that as assistant doctor in one of the hospitals he soon became impossible. They were almost beggars. But he kept still his great ideas of himself. He seemed to live in a complete hallucination, where he himself figured vivid and lordly. He guarded his wife jealously against the ignominy of her position, rushed round her like a brandished weapon, an amazing sight to the English eye, and her in his power, as if he hypnotized her. She was passive, dark, always in shadow. He was wasting away. Already, when the child was born, he seemed nothing but skin and bone and fixed idea. She watched him dying, nursed the baby, but really took no notice of anything. A dark was on her, like remorse, or like a remembering of the dark, savage, mystic ride, of dread, of death, of the shadow of revenge. When her husband died, she was relieved. He would no longer dart about her. England fitted her mood. Its aloofness, and foreignness. She had known a little of the language before coming, and a sort of parrot mind made her pick it up fairly easily. But she knew nothing of the English, nor of English life. Indeed, these did not exist for her. She was like one walking in the underworld, where the shades throng intelligibly, but have no connection with one. She felt the English people as a potent, cold, slightly hostile host amongst whom she walked isolated. The English people themselves were almost deferential to her. The church saw that she did not want. She walked without passion, like a shade tormented into moments of love by the child, her dying husband, with his tortured eyes and skin drawn tight over his face. He was as a vision to her, not a reality. In a vision, he was buried and put away. Then the vision ceased. She was untroubled. Time went on, gray, uncolored, like a long journey where she sat unconscious as the landscape unrolled. Beside her, when she rocked her baby at evening, maybe she fell into a Polish slumber song, or she talked sometimes to herself in Polish. Otherwise she did not think of Poland, nor of that life to which she had belonged. It was a great blot looming blank in its darkness. In the superficial activity of her life, she was all English. She even thought in English. But her long blanks and darkness of abstraction were Polish. So she lived for some time. Then, with slight uneasiness, she used half to awake to the streets of London. She realized that there was something around her very foreign. She realized she was in a strange place. And then she was sent away into the country. There came into her mind now the memory of her home, where she had been a child, the big house among the land, the peasants of the village. She was sent to Yorkshire to nurse an old rector in his rectory by the sea. This was the first shake of the kaleidoscope that brought in front of her eyes something she must see. It hurt her brain, the open country and the moors. It hurt her and hurt her. Yet it forced itself upon her as something living. It roused some potency of her childhood in her. It had some relation to her. There was green and silver and blue in the air about her now, and there was a strange insistence of light from the sea to which she must attend. Primroses glimmered around, many of them, and she stooped to the disturbing influence near her feet. She even picked one or two flowers, faintly remembering, in the new color of life, what had been. All the day long, as she sat at the upper window, the light came off the sea, constantly, constantly, without refusal, till it seemed to bear her away, and the noise of the sea created a drowsiness in her, a relaxation like sleep. Her automatic consciousness gave way a little. She stumbled sometimes. She had a poignant momentary vision of her living child that hurt her unspeakably. Her soul roused to attention. Very strange was the constant glitter of the sea unsheathed in heaven. Very warm and sweet the graveyard in a nook of the hill catching the sunshine and holding it as one holds a bee between the palms of the hands when it is benumbed. Grey grass and lichen and a little church and snowdrops among coarse grass, and a cupful of incredibly warm sunshine. She was troubled in spirit, hearing the rushing of the beck away down under the trees. She was startled and wondered what it was. Walking down, she found the bluebells around her glowing like a presence among the trees. Summer came. The moors were tangled with harebells, with water in the ruts of the roads. The heather came rosy under the skies, setting the whole world awake, and she was uneasy. She went past the gorse bushes, shrinking from their presence. She stepped into the heather as into a quickening bath that almost hurt. Her fingers moved over the clasped fingers of the child. She heard the anxious voice of the baby as it tried to make her talk, distraught. And she shrank away again, back into her darkness, and for a long while remained blotted safely away from living. But autumn came, with the faint red glimmer of robins singing. Winter darkened the moors, and almost savagely she turned again to life, demanding her life back again, demanding that it should be as it had been when she was a girl, on the land, at home, under the sky. Snow lay in great expanses. The telegraph post strode over the white earth, away under the gloom of the sky, and savagely her desire rose in her again, demanding that this was Poland, her youth, that all war was her own again. But there were no sledges nor bells. She did not see the peasants coming out like new people in their sheepskins, and their fresh, ruddy, bright faces, that seemed to become new and vivid when the snow lit up the ground. It did not come to her, the life of her youth. It did not come back. There was a little agony of struggle, then a relapse into the darkness of the convent, where Satan and the devils raged round the walls, and Christ was white on the cross of victory.